Claudia here, coming at you from Buckhorn Island State Park. I'm right here along Woods Creek. Scientists use several different characteristics to help determine whether or not an ecosystem is a wetland. First, they take a look at the plants that are growing in that ecosystem. Some plants are what we call wetland indicator species, and this means that most of the time if you see them, you're probably in a wetland. Scientists also take a look at the type of soil that can be found in an ecosystem. If it's a special hydritic soil, you're probably in a wetland. Scientists also look at the amount of water that inundates an area of land. If it's covered in water for most or all of the year, you're probably in a wetland too. There are many different types of wetlands that exist in the world. Here in the Niagara River watershed, we're lucky enough to have several of those types. At Buckhorn Island State Park, we're right along the Niagara River, so that makes this wetland a riverine wetland. It's a wetland that borders one of our rivers or our stream. A marsh is a wetland that has herbaceous, non-woody plants growing in it, versus a swamp that can have some woody plants like a tree growing in it. A bog, which you may have heard of, is defined by a very special plant called sphagnum moss. This moss produces really acidic conditions. Here at Buckhorn Island State Park, we're lucky to see two different types of wetlands. There's both a marshy wetland with lots of herbaceous plants like cattails, and then there's also a forested wetland that has trees and other woody shrubs growing. So today we're going to go explore both of those types of wetlands, and we're going to see what makes them just so important to us. Let's take a minute to appreciate the absolute beauty of the Niagara River. Here we are at Buckhorn Island State Park, and look at how gorgeous the Niagara River is. Not only does this river provide us happiness by being able to appreciate its beauty, but it also provides extremely important habitat. The Niagara River is a globally significant, important bird area. This means populations of birds that are globally significant for that entire species depend on the habitat that the Niagara River provides. Especially during migration seasons, we'll see large numbers of birds utilizing this river. Wetlands are natural filters and sponges. They provide ecosystem services that benefit the entire Niagara River watershed. They can help filter out pollutants by trapping sediments and removing nutrients. Wetlands are just like the wastewater treatment plant. They provide both primary and secondary treatment of water. The primary treatment of water, if you remember, is that physical breakdown or removal of sediment. Secondary treatment is that bacterial breakdown or decomposition of pollutants. They can also help to protect our communities from flooding by storing water. Not only that, they can help provide resilience to the impacts of climate change by storing carbon. Think about the reasons why wetlands are important to you. To me, I really appreciate the habitat they provide for birds. I'm a big fan of watching birds, so I love to visit wetlands and to appreciate the diversity of wildlife that can be found here. Comment below on what makes a wetland important to you. Unfortunately, humans have had many impacts on our wetland ecosystems here in the Niagara River watershed. Development has taken up some of our wetland ecosystem space and used it for things like human activities, human buildings and projects, and that takes up the vitally important habitat that our wetlands provide. Here at Buckhorn Island State Park, we're lucky to have over 100 acres of protected wetland space that provides the ecosystem services that we talked about before and provides habitat to those animals that depend upon it here at Buckhorn Island. Humans can have many different impacts on our wetland ecosystems here in the Niagara River watershed. In front of me is an example of just that. This plant is called garlic mustard. This is an invasive species. You might remember when we talked about invasive species in our class. It's a species of plant or animal that's non-native, and it has a negative impact on our ecosystems. When I say it's non-native, that means it was introduced from somewhere else by humans. So one of the human impacts that we have had on this environment here at Buckhorn Island State Park is the introduction of invasive species like garlic mustard. Garlic mustard, unfortunately, has a negative impact. Because it's non-native, our native species, our native herbivores, don't necessarily know that they can eat it, and it's really competitive, so it'll outcrowd some of our native plants that we really like to see in our forests and our wetlands. Cattails, like the ones you see behind me, are a really important feature here in freshwater marshes. A cattail provides food for lots of different creatures. For example, muskrats like to eat the inside of the stem, especially in early spring. It's a very important food source for them. These cattails also provide important habitat. Red-winged blackbirds are one of the first birds that we see back in the spring in the Niagara River watershed here in western New York, and they use cattails like the ones behind me to nest. Often you'll hear them with their telltale song. It sounds like they're saying "conqueree." If you're walking by a cattail marsh like the one behind me, keep your eyes out. You might see red-winged blackbirds. Take a listen. Here we are at Buckhorn Island State Park, and we're listening to the beautiful sounds of the chorus frog calling. Creatures like the chorus frog you hear calling behind me depend upon habitats like this vernal pool at Buckhorn Island State Park. Wetlands can be important for many different reasons. Take a look at this sign. The Buckhorn Island Woods Creek Wetland provides a great place for people to get outside, get some recreation in, and go for a nice paddle out on the water. Hey everyone, I've got another wetland species to show you. This in front of me, this shrub is called a dogwood. This tree is a really important part of our wetland habitats. It provides a lot of great food sources for animals. Especially in the fall, it gets fruits on it that provide a lot of lipids and proteins for migratory bird species as they're moving south in the fall. One bird you might know that really likes to eat the berries on this dogwood is the American robin. Can you think of how that food web works? Which one is the producer? Which one is the consumer? There's a lot that you can do to help protect these amazing places that we call wetlands. Plastic pollution, unfortunately, has a really big negative impact on our waterways and our wetland ecosystems. If you can get out and pick up the litter that you see, you can help to reduce the plastic that gets into our waterways and has a negative impact on our wildlife. You can study hard and become a wetlands ecologist or a habitat restoration ecologist. Here at Buckhorn Island State Park, ecologists are working really hard on a habitat restoration project that's working to improve the wetland ecosystem here and improve some of the ecosystem services that it provides. So you can get involved that way. Think about how your career can help to protect and restore these awesome habitats that we call wetlands.